What's up, guys? My name is Garrett Cook, and I'm about to present my condition presentation over Down syndrome. Hopefully you're having a good day or good night whenever you decide to watch this. The link will probably be in Blackboard. I feel like a YouTuber. What's a time that you can think that extra isn't a positive thing? It's kind of hard. Extra's always better. You want extra cars, extra land, extra money, extra houses, extra fries on the side when you order a burger, extra condiments, everything. When it comes to chromosomes, extra's not always better. My goal is to be a PTA or a physical therapy assistant. To achieve this goal, I'm going to research Down syndrome for my condition presentation and teach y'all a little bit about it. I'm going to go on a limb and say that most everybody in Patho is probably either going to do PTA or nursing or somewhere in the medical field, so y'all can relate to my goal. Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a condition where a person has an extra chromosome. Chromosomes are small packages of genes in the body. Chromosomes determine how the body forms during pregnancy and how the body functions after. Typically, a baby is born with 46 chromosomes, but Down syndrome babies have an extra copy of one of these chromosomes on chromosome 21. Down syndrome is one of the most common chromosome abnormalities. This video will show you a little bit about it.
You might know or have seen somebody with Down syndrome. But in this video, you're going to learn what it is and why it happens. Down syndrome is caused by a change in the DNA. You probably remember that any change in the structure or the amount of DNA of an organism is called a mutation. Mutations are caused by mutagenic agents, like some chemicals, or ultraviolet light, for example. If a mutation happens in a somatic or body cell, only this cell and its daughter cells will be affected. If a mutation happens in a sex cell or gamete and fertilization happens, then all of the cells of the embryo or fetus and a baby will carry this mutation. This is what happens in Down syndrome. Humans usually have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 46 in total, 44 autosomes, and 2 sex chromosomes. Sex cells are produced in the type of cell division called meiosis, or reduction division. In humans, meiosis produces 4 daughter cells that each have 23 chromosomes, half the number of a somatic cell. However, sometimes the chromosomes are not separated or divided up how they should be, and this is called non-disjunction. One example of non-disjunction in humans is the condition known as Down syndrome. In this case, the 21st chromosome fails to segregate, and the gamete produced possesses 24 chromosomes, 23 plus an extra copy of chromosome 21. The fusion of this gamete with a normal one results in the offspring having 47 chromosomes. So what are the consequences of having an extra chromosome for people with Down syndrome? Well, the difficulties vary in severity. Facial characteristic can include a flattened, broadened face and narrowed eyes. But people with Down syndrome don't all look the same. They also look like their parents and family. People with Down syndrome may have a lower than average IQ and a shorter than average life expectancy. Some conditions more common in people with Down syndrome include problems with the heart and bowel, difficulties with hearing and vision, and a higher risk of infections. However, everybody who has Down syndrome may be affected in different ways. Pablo Pineda, for example, a Spanish actor who won a Silver Shell Award in the San Sebastian Film Festival, was also the first person with Down syndrome in Europe to get a university degree. He now has 2. Non-disjunction does occur with other chromosomes, but these usually result in miscarriage. This is less likely to happen with a 21st chromosome because it is relatively small. The Down syndrome mutation appears to occur in the production of ova rather than sperm, and its incidence increases with the age of the mother. The chance increases from approximately 1 in several thousand in a teenage mother to 1 in 100 in a 40-year-old mother. In some countries, people who are pregnant are offered diagnostic genetic testing for Down syndrome. This can be done by blood tests or amniocentesis, which involves taking a sample of the amniotic fluid surrounding the fetus in the uterus and looking at the number of chromosomes in those cells to see if any have the extra chromosome 21 for Down syndrome. Having the tests may be the choice of the parents and will allow them to be more prepared for a baby with Down syndrome, or choose to have an abortion. In Iceland, this type of genetic screening is widespread, and people are counselled when they have the test. Most choose abortion. This means that almost nobody is born with Down syndrome in Iceland. What do you think about this? The estimated incidence of Down syndrome is about 1 in 1,000 births worldwide. There are about 15,000 births per hour in the world. So how many people are born with Down syndrome each day in the world? Pause the video while you work it out. So now you know a little more.
Alright guys, to pick up where we left off, we had just finished that Down syndrome video. So a couple things he stated in the video, I'm going to come back to in a couple of the later slides. So y'all stay tuned for that. Some signs and symptoms of Down syndrome according to our textbook. They have a flattened face, especially on the bridge of their nose, almond-shaped eyes that slant up, a short neck, small ears, a tongue that tends to stick out of the mouth, tiny white spots on the iris of the eye, and the iris of the eye is the colored part of your eye, small hands and feet, a single line across the palm of your hand known as the palmar crease. We've talked about that one in class and stuff. Small pinky finger that tends to curve towards the thumb, and they're shorter as children and they're shorter as adults. So there are 3 main types of Down syndrome. You have trisomy 21, translocation Down syndrome, and mosaic Down syndrome. So trisomy 21 is the one that is the most common. It's probably the one you see almost majority of the time you go out. So it occurs in about 95% of people with Down syndrome, and it's each cell in the body has 3 separate copies of chromosome 21 instead of the normal 2 copies. It's the extra chromosome. Translocation Down syndrome, I know it was in a couple of our PowerPoints in class. Didn't really go into major detail about it, but this is 3% of the people with Down syndrome, and this occurs when an extra part or a whole part of the chromosome 21 is present, but it is attached or translocated to a different chromosome rather than being a separate chromosome 21. So instead of it being its own chromosome 21, it's either attached to another chromosome or it's translocated to another one. And then mosaic Down syndrome, I know a lot of people don't really know about this one, but mosaic means combination and mixture. So what that means is that you have cells with 3 copies of the chromosome 21, and you have cells with the 2 copies, the normal copies of chromosome 21. Now, these can be accepted or declined, so depending on which chromosome they accept, either the one with 3 copies or the one with 2 copies, that can determine the severity of the Down syndrome. So a couple cause and risk factors. Researchers don't know why Down syndrome occurs or how many factors play a role. What they do know is that it is an extra chromosome. That is the only fact that they really know about it. And then the extra 21 chromosome can lead to physical features and developmental changes. Now, we talked about some of the physical features, and so we'll talk about that again here later on, but the developmental challenges, we're definitely going to get involved in that in a little bit of the slides. So a couple factors, or one of the factors that is a big one for having babies with Down syndrome, is women 35 years or older are more likely to have a Down syndrome baby than a woman who is younger. However, most of the majority of the babies born now with Down syndrome are from younger mothers, but that age factor does play a big role in it. So a couple of tests, you have screening tests and you have diagnostic tests. Screening tests can tell whether a woman's pregnancy has a higher chance or a lower chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. So those can be ultrasounds and blood tests. They're a little bit safer than the diagnostic test, but they're not as accurate and they can't give a full-on diagnosis. So the diagnostic test, they're performed after a positive screening test, and they're ordered to confirm or decline what they saw. So if you have a positive screening test, your ultrasound or a blood test comes back and it looks like you're having a higher risk of having a Down syndrome baby, they'll schedule a diagnostic test, and that'll either confirm or decline what they saw. And that's what the diagnostic test is. And diagnostic tests can either be amniocentesis, the CVS, and ultrasounds. So pathophysiology. Before I get into pathophysiology of Down syndrome, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is pathophysiology. So pathophysiology is a branch of medical science that is the essential nature of disease. The changes of structure and function in tissues and the organs of the body that cause disease. So this is the class we're in right now. We should all know this stuff, but just a little refresher before I get into the other pathophysiology of Down syndrome. So it involves the signs and symptoms of the disease, and that can be microscopic, which is on a larger scale, or microscopic, which is really small scale. So pathophysiology of Down syndrome. I've said it before, I've been saying it the whole slide, but it's trisomy 21. It's the chromosome 21 in approximately 95% of all cases. So it has that extra chromosome on chromosome 21. Instead of the 2 copies, it's 3. So a couple more of the symptoms of Down syndrome. You have varying degrees of mental retardation, flattened facial features, we talked about that one, loose skin on the neck, talked about the small neck, a Simon crease, the palmar crease on your hand, underdeveloped intestines. We haven't talked about that one, but that one's a pretty important one. Think about it, if you have underdeveloped intestines, you're probably not going to have the best digestive system, and your insides are going to be a little bit messed up. So developmental dysplasia of the hip, they have flexible hips. Atlanteoaxial subluxation. It's a hard word. Congenital heart defects. Sorry, they're just not forming right now, my words. But hypotonia, it's hypo meaning lower, tonia meaning muscles, so their muscles are a little bit weaker, not defined as much as a normal person's would be. And then you have hearing deficits. So some interventions. This looks like a lot of words. I'm going to sum it up. So you have your finger ball walking test, and then you have your manual muscle test. There's an etch test, which is handwriting. I'm going to get involved in those tests a little bit later on, so I'm not going to worry about them right here. Really what the physical therapy interventions focus on, they focus on improving muscle strength, balance, coordination, and movement skills to improve daily activities and quality of life. And that's a lot of the times that's what a lot of the physical therapy intervention covers in most of all conditions. But it's mainly important in Down syndrome. So the finger ball walk, it's a fun way to get the kids motivated and to get them active. They improve their hand muscles, their strength, their fine motor skills in their hands. So what you're going to do is, okay, so you're going to have a ball and you're going to walk it. Don't let them roll it. That's cheating a little bit, but you'll walk it up. It's kind of hard. You'll walk it up your side, and it improves your hand muscles, your coordination, and your strength in your fingers as well. So the etch test, I'm going to come back to that one because we do have a video on it. So I'll circle back to that one so I can get all these interventions in, and then we can play a video so it'll be fresh on your mind. So your manual muscle test, it is also known as the MMT. It is a standardized test assessment that measures muscle strength and function. It's a free test. The area of assessment is strength, and there are multiple parts of the MMT. You can click on the link below. It'll be on the YouTube and stuff like that, so you can look at that. And then you have resistance band exercises. Okay, so they're pretty straightforward in the name, but they help focus on strengthening the core, your arms, your back, and the physical therapist can use creative moves to keep the patient engaged. So a lot of the times with Down syndrome, they're not going to be near as engaged, and they're going to kind of stray. Their attention deficit's not going to be all there. So these can be kind of fun for them. You can get it stretched out, you know, work on your muscles. So that's a little fun exercise for them that helps as well. So back to the edge. So the edge test. It's an evaluation tool of children in handwriting. So what it's going to do is it's going to assess the child's legibility and speed of handwriting, as well as the child's pencil management related to writing tasks that are commonly done in a classroom setting. So what they're going to do is they're going to work on their writing, see how well they write, see how fast they write, see what they can do. And it's kind of a test on their fine motor skills of their hands. So we're going to play that video and get a little bit more information on that.
Today I'm going to have you do some writing. So write your first name on this line here.
Can you write my last name on the second line?
Yes, you can. Okay, Tiana, starting here, write each of your alphabet letters separately in lowercase, starting with A and ending with Z. If you make a mistake on a letter, you only get to erase it one time. If by chance you don't know how to write the letter, you can put a dot like this in its place. Are you ready? Okay, begin. This time, you're going to write your alphabet in uppercase letters. If you make a mistake on a letter, you only get to erase it one time, same like before. You can begin right here. Okay, this time, write your numbers 1 through 12. Remember, 1 through 12. Remember, if you make a mistake on a number, you only get to erase it one time. Okay?
Just like the alphabet?
Yeah, but this time you're gonna write 1 through 12. So you can begin right here.
12, 1, 2?
Like 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, like 1 and 2 is 12.
Write your numbers 1 through 12.
Okay.
Okay, good.
So that video is kind of a little boring video, but it kind of shows you what the edge test would be and how they would go through a little bit of that, how they would go through the test and explain it to them and what they would do and work on their fine motor skills. Alright guys, to pick up where we left off, we had just recently talked about the physical therapy interventions. How most of these interventions helped improve daily activities and quality life. So the first one, it was the finger ball walk. Helps improve your finger muscles and your hand muscles. The second one was the Etch evaluation tool for children's handwriting. It assesses legibility, speed, and pencil management for children. That was also the video I showed, where it was the woman conducting the child through the test. 3, the manual muscle test for strength and functioning. And then the other one was the air resistant band exercises for your core, back, shoulders, and it helped the patient be encouraged. It seemed like more of a fun exercise and got them more on task. So as you know, we needed 2 editorial articles for our presentation. So my first one was the intellectual disabilities of Down syndrome from birth and throughout life, assessment and treatment. So to sum it up, it reflected the progress of clinical trials used to improve learning and memory. So through a clinical setting, they ran through a couple trials to see whether they improved your learning, or they improved your memory, or if they improved both learning and memory. My second editorial article was Our Down Syndrome Journey. According to the Hampton 2021, her daughter has Down syndrome. Her mother documents her journey through a blog, so she would talk about her journey with her daughter who has Down syndrome on a daily basis, blog about it, tell people about it, tell people what they saw, what they heard, and kind of how their days would go and the journeys that they went through, how they would go and progress. She says people should find the beauty in the unexpected things that happen in life. As you also know, we needed 2 research articles. My first one was an international discussion over a new prenatal testing for Down syndrome. One perspective has been noticeably absent, which is actually talking to people with Down syndrome and getting their side of the story and their point of views, instead of just talking to doctors and scientists and family members and friends. They would actually go and talk to the actual people diagnosed with DS. So to sum this one up, a number of small-scale studies have looked into the questions of self-concept and self-esteem in those with Down syndrome. A lot of the research that was found was that people with diagnosed Down syndrome who actually had DS thought very highly of themselves, and they were really positive and thought they were normal and like they were very happy with who they were. So my second research article was, according to Pinter, information about the brain has come from mainly autopsies of Down syndrome. So he thought that he would use MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging, to look at the brain of Down syndrome. So what he basically saw, to sum it up, was that 1, overall smaller volumes due to smaller volumes of the cerebral, gray, and white matter. 2, a disproportionately smaller cerebral, hold on, this is a hard word, I'm going to look at it, cerebellar volume. And 3, large adjusted volumes of subcortical and parietal gray matter and temporal white matter components. So he noticed a lot of different matter, gray matter, white matter, cerebral volume, and a lot of different levels of volume kind of were shaken up and different compared to ours, or a normal value would be. So the case study that I had chosen, it was the passive and adolescents with Down syndrome. The International Classification of Functioning, Disability, and Health, the ICF. So I'm sure you've all heard of the ICF models and different ICF models and what that is. Well, that can go into a lot of different conditions and whatnot, but it definitely goes into Down syndrome. So this case study addresses several parts of the ICF model concerning the body function and section. Examples of these body functions were voice and speech functions. These led to us activities and participation of good communication. So this article discusses that some individuals with Down syndrome are capable of producing, imitating, and comprehending passive sentences, which was kind of out of the norm because most of the recent and older studies of Down syndrome, they weren't as capable of carrying on a normal conversation or imitating one of a normal conversation. They were kind of all over the place, couldn't really stay on task. So the lack of reading social cues, following conversations in pairs, tend to have trouble communicating with others. Their communication also harms to their interpersonal interactions and relationships. In this case study, experiments were conducted to evaluate the hypothesis that when there is no other comprehension, or when the comprehension of reversible passive is unstable, the passive is understood and active. So the hypothesis was tested by production, imitation, and 4 comprehensive experiments. These experiments in the case study showed that adolescents with Down syndrome, as a group, do not produce passives. They do not imitate. Long passives and short passives are a struggle to imitate. So basically, it is, in fact, a struggle for them to communicate short periods, long periods, and they have trouble staying on task and actually carrying on that conversation. Okay, the personal case study. This is Blake. He's actually a personal friend of my family's, and he is 12 years old. He is male, and he does have trisomy 21, which was Down syndrome, which was the main one. It was 95% of people who have Down syndrome. At the age of diagnosis, he was in vitro, so he was still in his mother's womb when they knew that he had Down syndrome. The length of time of condition, he's 12 years old. He's still alive. He's had it his whole life. So how it was diagnosed, they found it through an ultrasound and amniocentesis test, as I discussed earlier in the slides, in the presentation. That was actually both diagnostic test, and then the ultrasound was also a screening test as well. The cause was an abnormal cell division resulted in extra genetic material from chromosome 21. So it was that extra chromosome 21. Instead of the 2 normal copies, he had that extra 3rd one. So some of the signs and symptoms, I know we've talked about it before, but this is for Blake. He has the flat facial features, as you can tell, small head and ears, short neck, you can tell that, eyes that slant upward, poor muscle tone. Now, Blake has had numerous hours of therapy, so he has gone to therapy for a lot of the different muscle tones and aspects and overall daily quality life, like we talked in the physical therapy interventions. He has gone through several of those. And one of the biggest things about the physical therapy was that his tongue did stick out. And so they went through a bunch of physical therapy to make that tongue retract and so it doesn't stick out every time. So he did go to physical therapy for that, and it is fixed now. So, like I said, I've known Blake. I went to high school with his brother. Him and my mom are very good friends. Some people might be embarrassed about having a Down syndrome brother or friend or family member, but this family has always been very supportive of Blake, and they've always taken very good care of him. And he's always had good support and people in his corner. So, and she did give me permission to use Blake in this presentation in PowerPoint, and she wanted people to know that his sweet and happy smile was how he normally is and how he is always happy. I'm going to come back to this and use that as one. Hey, sorry guys, back to where we left off. I was telling you how Blake and me were close family friends. He had trisomy 21, and his mom did give me permission to use this. Sorry, my phone storage is running out, so I'm going to come back to this one. So Down syndrome summary. So basically what we've learned is that Down syndrome occurs because there's an extra chromosome on the chromosome 21. Instead of the 2 normal chromosomes, there's 3. And so it's an extra one of those chromosomes. Chromosomes are small packages of genes in the body. They kind of determine how the body forms during pregnancy and how the body's going to function after. So we talked about what Down syndrome is, some signs and symptoms like the flat facial features, palmar crease. We've talked about physical therapy interventions, couple of those tests. We've talked about some things of what might cause that, being over the age of 35, some other stuff like that. But mainly, Down syndrome is just an extra chromosome. So, some of the questions I've had that I'm going to ask y'all are, one is pretty sketchy, but so a lot of parents feel guilty that they caused this for their kid, or that they did something wrong, they drank during pregnancy. So one of the questions I have for y'all is, if you had a kid with Down syndrome, would you feel guilty in any way, or would you feel bad? So that's one of the questions I'm going to ask you guys. So my second question, a lot of people think that it can be caused due to inheritance or ethnicity or economical values, or where you're at and economically. So do you guys think that Down syndrome is caused due to ethnicity or an economically value of where your aspects are of money? That's another question I'm going to ask you guys. Another one is, do you guys think that being Down syndrome causes you to, trying to think how to word this. Do you think Down syndrome holds you back? Would it hold you back does somebody with Down syndrome get held back a lot, do you think? Like maybe in life or different aspects of things. And my final question is probably going to be the toughest. This is the one I was going to ask. Since you do know during the test, the diagnostics test and screening test, if your child has a higher availability of getting Down syndrome, or if your child has Down syndrome. This is nothing about politics or anything like that, but would you keep that child and raise it and love it? Or if you did know ahead of time, would you get that abortion? I know that's a tough question, and I know a lot of people would say they'd keep it, but that's just a tough question, and I think it's a reasonable question to ask nowadays in time. So that's my Down syndrome condition presentation for pathophysiology, and I hope you guys liked it. So here's some of my references. Thank you guys.